childhood promise binds Felix and Hyunjin as a forgotten secret resurfaces, testing loyalty, fear, and the strength of an unbreakable bond. The first crack of thunder split the midnight sky just as Hyunjin heard Felix whisper, "Don't let go no matter what happens." Rain lashed against the abandoned railway bridge, turning the rusted steel into a maze of glistening shadows. Water dripped from every beam, falling in a relentless rhythm that echoed through the valley below. Wind screamed between broken railings, carrying the scent of wet earth and old iron. Hyunjin's trembling fingers clung to Felix's wrist with every ounce of strength he had left. His sneakers slipped on the rain-soaked metal, sending a shower of loose gravel into the darkness beneath them. "Felix," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I'm here." Answer came without hesitation. Felix's hand tightened around Hyunjin's, warm despite the freezing rain. Behind them, footsteps thundered across the bridge, not one pair. Many flashlights sliced through the darkness. "There they are," Hyunjin looked over his shoulder. Silhouettes emerged from the storm, their faces hidden beneath black raincoats. The beams of light danced wildly, reflecting off puddles and broken tracks. "Getting closer," Hyunjin whispered. Felix didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared toward the opposite end of the bridge where an old maintenance tunnel disappeared into the mountain. His breathing remained calm, almost too calm. "We run on three. If trust me." Hyunjin swallowed. He had trusted Felix once before, years ago when they were only children, before everything changed. One, the footsteps grew louder. A bolt of lightning illuminated the bridge. For a single heartbeat, Hyunjin saw the faces chasing them, people he recognized, people who were never supposed to know the truth. Pulled him forward, both of them sprinted through the rain as the bridge shook beneath their feet, metal groaned, wood splintered. The storm swallowed every sound except their pounding hearts. 12 hours earlier, morning sunlight poured through the windows of Hanyang Arts University, painting golden rectangles across polished hallways filled with laughter and hurried conversations. Hyunjin stood alone beside the studio entrance, absent-mindedly turning a silver ring around his finger. He always wore it, a simple ring with tiny scratches running along its surface. Nobody knew why, not even his closest classmates. To everyone else, Hyunjin seemed composed, elegant, confident, a talented painter whose exhibitions were beginning to attract attention throughout the city. But appearances were fragile things. Behind his quiet smile lived countless sleepless nights. He hated thunderstorms, he avoided abandoned places, he never crossed railway bridges. No one questioned these habits until that morning. Still wearing it, the familiar voice froze him. Hyunjin looked up. Felix stood a few steps away, sunlight catching the soft blonde strands of his hair. He looked older than Hyunjin remembered, stronger, more confident, yet his eyes remained exactly the same, bright, gentle, filled with an impossible warmth. Hyunjin hadn't seen him in nearly 8 years. For a moment neither of them moved, neither spoke. The hallway around them continued as though time itself had forgot to stop. Then Felix smiled. "You never took it off." Hyunjin instinctively hid the ring inside his pocket. "You disappeared." "I know. Never called. I couldn't. You promised." Felix lowered his gaze. "I remember." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just unbearably heavy. Hyunjin wanted to be angry. He had imagined this reunion hundreds of times. Sometimes he shouted, sometimes he walked away, sometimes he pretended not to care. Instead, all he managed to ask was, "Why are you here?" Felix looked around before stepping closer. "Need your help." Hyunjin laughed softly. It wasn't a happy laugh. "You vanish for 8 years and the first thing you say is that you need my help. I wouldn't ask if it weren't important." Felix blinked. "No, I'm done keeping promises for people who forget theirs." Hyunjin turned and entered the painting studio without looking back, yet even as the heavy door closed behind him, he couldn't ignore the strange feeling twisting inside his chest, because Felix hadn't tried to stop him. The scent of oil paint and fresh canvas filled the spacious room. Students worked quietly beneath high ceilings while instrumental music drifted from hidden speakers. Hyunjin picked up his brush, but his hands refused to cooperate. Every stroke became another memory. A summer afternoon, 2 boys racing through wildflowers, a tiny wooden box buried beneath an old oak tree, pinky fingers locked together. "Promise me we'll always find each other." "I promise." Brush slipped, a streak of black paint ruined the landscape he had spent weeks creating. "Damn." Day, Hyunjin turned, his classmate Minseo tilted her head with concern. "Been staring at that canvas for 20 minutes. "Fine, you're haunted," he forced a smile. "Is it that obvious? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maybe I have, he thought. Outside the university gates, Felix waited alone beneath a maple tree. He carried nothing except a weathered backpack. Inside it rested a small wooden box wrapped carefully in faded blue cloth. Its corners were worn smooth by time. Across the lid was carved a tiny star. Felix traced the carving with his thumb. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not to himself, to someone who wasn't there. A vibration interrupted his thoughts. His phone displayed an unknown number. He answered. "They found the box." Felix's expression changed instantly. "How? We don't know." "They open it?" A pause. "No." Felix closed his eyes. "We're out of time." The call ended. He looked toward the university building. Hyunjin was the only person who could help him. But convincing him would be far more difficult than escaping the people already searching for them. That evening, clouds gathered across the city. The air felt unusually cold for early autumn. Hyunjin left campus carrying rolled canvases beneath one arm. His apartment was only 15 minutes away on foot. Halfway there, he noticed someone following him. The footsteps remained perfectly synchronized with his own. He stopped, they stopped, he walked again, the footsteps returned, his pulse quickened. He turned sharply, no one, only empty sidewalks, fallen leaves, streetlights flickering before sunset. Imagining things, he muttered, then he saw it, a tiny paper crane resting on a nearby bench. His breath caught. There was only one person who ever folded paper cranes like that. He picked it up. Inside, written in careful handwriting, were 5 words: "Meet me where we promised." No signature, none was needed. Hyunjin stared toward the darkening sky. Thunder rolled somewhere far away. For years, he had tried to forget that promise. For years, he had convinced himself it no longer mattered, yet now the past had returned. Carrying secrets that refused to stay buried. Slowly, almost against his own will, he slipped the paper crane into his pocket, turned away from the road leading home, and began walking toward the forgot place where 2 children had once believed that a single small promise could last forever. The road leading to the old hill had almost disappeared beneath years of neglect. Wild grass brushed against Hyunjin's legs with every step, damp from the evening mist that had begun creeping across the ground. Crickets sang from hidden corners of the field while distant thunder rolled like a warning that refused to come any closer. Every familiar landmark had aged alongside him. The small stream where he and Felix once skipped stones had narrowed into little more than a ribbon of dark water. The wooden fence surrounding the abandoned orchard leaned at impossible angles, surrendering slowly to time. Only the old oak tree remained unchanged. Its enormous branches still stretched across the hill like protective arms, casting long shadows over the fading light. Hyunjin stopped several meters away. His heartbeat slowed. Memories arrived without permission. A little boy with freckles laughing so hard that he nearly fell backward. Another boy, taller even then, carefully tying a blue ribbon around a tiny wooden box, a promise spoken with childish certainty. "If we ever get lost, we'll meet here. Come even if it's raining. Come even if it's snowing. Come even if everyone tells me not to." Memory dissolved as footsteps crunched softly behind him. "You remembered." Felix's voice carried the same gentle warmth it always had. Hyunjin turned. Felix stood beneath the oak tree, his blonde hair stirred by the breeze. He looked exhausted now that the fading sunlight revealed the dark circles beneath his eyes. There were faint scars along one hand that Hyunjin didn't remember seeing before. "You knew I would," Hyunjin said quietly. "I hope." "You still don't deserve that hope." Felix accepted the words without protest. "I know." Silence settled between them again. Neither one seemed eager to break it. Finally, Felix walked toward the tree and knelt beside its massive roots. He brushed away layers of leaves before uncovering a smooth, weathered stone. Without hesitation, he lifted it. Beneath it was loose soil. Hyunjin's eyes widened. "You never moved it." "Couldn't." Felix dug carefully with both hands until his fingers struck wood. A small box emerged from the earth. It was stained with dirt and age, but the faded blue ribbon remained tied around it exactly as it had been years ago. Hyunjin stared at it. "I thought someone would have found it." "I checked every year." "You came back?" Felix nodded. "Every year." Hyunjin looked away. For 8 years he had believed Felix had forgotten him completely. The realization settled heavily inside his chest. Felix placed the box gently between them. "I wanted you to open it. You could have done it yourself." "I promised I wouldn't." Hyunjin frowned. "What are you talking about?" Felix smiled faintly. "You don't remember." "Remember enough." Felix looked directly into his eyes. "You remember the promise." His voice softened. "But you forgot why we made it." A chill traveled down Hyunjin's spine. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Felix untied the ribbon. The knot came apart surprisingly easily despite the passing years. He opened the lid. Inside rested 2 folded letters. A faded photograph, a silver compass, and something wrapped in white cloth. Hyunjin reached for the photograph first. It showed the two of them standing beneath the same oak tree, no older than 10. Both of them were smiling. Behind them stood a woman Hyunjin vaguely recognized. Long dark hair, kind eyes, one arm around each boy. He frowned. "I know her." Felix swallowed. "She was my mother." Hyunjin looked again. Fragments of forgotten memories flickered across his mind. The smell of cinnamon bread, soft laughter. Someone gently brushing dirt from his knees after he fell while running. His voice caught. "She used to bake for us." Felix nodded. "Every Saturday." "I haven't thought about her in years." "Neither had I." Hyunjin carefully returned the photograph to the box. "What happened to her?" Felix didn't answer immediately. The silence itself became an answer. "I'm sorry." "So am I." The wind picked up. Leaves rustled overhead. Felix lifted the wrapped object from the box. His movements became strangely hesitant, as though even touching it carried consequences. He slowly unfolded the white cloth. Inside lay another ring nearly identical to the one Hyunjin wore. Only one detail differed. A tiny star was engraved on its inner band. Hyunjin instinctively touched the ring on his own finger. "A pair." Felix nodded. "My mother made them." "Why?" "Because she believed promises should have witnesses." Hyunjin laughed quietly. "That sounds like something she'd say." "It does." Felix's smile faded. "She told us never to separate them." "So why do you still have yours?" "Because I never stopped looking for you." The words landed with unexpected weight. Hyunjin had spent years convincing himself that forgetting Felix was easier than missing him. Now every carefully built wall inside him was beginning to crack. He reached toward the second ring. The instant his fingertips touched the cool silver, a sharp pain exploded behind his eyes. The hill disappeared. Darkness swallowed everything, then flashes. A woman running through heavy rain, someone shouting, a car skidding across wet asphalt, a child's terrified scream, hands stained with blood, a voice repeating over and over, "Protect the box." Hyunjin stumbled backward. His breathing became ragged. Felix caught his arm before he could fall. "What was that?" "You remembered something." "No." Hyunjin shook his head violently. "I saw something. They're the same thing." His pulse hammered in his ears. "I don't understand." "I know." You know what happened to me, Felix hesitated. I know what happened to both of us. Hyunjin stared. What are you hiding? Before Felix could answer, the peaceful evening shattered. A loud engine roared from the road below. Headlights swept across the hillside. Not one vehicle, three black SUVs climbed the narrow dirt path far faster than they should have been able to. Felix's face lost all color. They found us. Hyunjin turned toward the approaching lights. Who? The people who should never have known this place. Vehicles stopped at the bottom of the hill. Car doors slammed shut one after another. Several figures stepped out, dressed in dark clothing. None of them spoke. One of them simply pointed toward the oak tree. Felix quickly closed the wooden box. We have to leave. Hyunjin remained frozen. This is insane. Explain everything. When we're alive long enough for you to hear it. The strangers began climbing the hill with frightening precision. Their footsteps were calm, measured. As if they already knew escape was impossible, Felix grabbed Hyunjin's wrist. For a brief second, Hyunjin considered pulling away, walking in the opposite direction, pretending none of this had ever happened. Then he looked down at the ring on his finger, at the matching ring clutched in Felix's hand, at the old wooden box they had buried together as children. Whatever secret had slept beneath this tree for years was no longer buried, it had awakened. Without another word, Hyunjin tightened his grip on Felix's hand. For the first time in 8 years, they ran together.
They ran without speaking. The cold night air cut through the trees as branches scraped against their sleeves and damp leaves cracked beneath their feet. The forest that had once been their playground had become an endless maze of darkness, its familiar paths swallowed by years of neglect. Moonlight slipped through the canopy in thin silver ribbons, illuminating the ground for only a heartbeat before disappearing again. Hyunjin struggled to keep pace. His lungs burned. Every breath tasted of wet earth and pine. Behind them came the steady sound of pursuit, not hurried, not frantic, but patient. Whoever was following them seemed certain they would eventually be caught. Left, Felix whispered. Hyunjin trusted the instruction without thinking. They darted between two enormous boulders and emerged onto a narrow trail that wound along the edge of a steep ravine. The wind rushed upward from the darkness below, carrying the distant roar of a river hidden beneath the trees. Who are they? Hyunjin asked between breaths. Felix kept his eyes forward. I don't know all of them. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Hyunjin frowned. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to survive. The reply silenced him. They reached a fallen log stretching across a shallow stream. Felix crossed first, moving with surprising confidence despite the slippery bark. Hyunjin followed carefully, his shoes almost losing their grip before he jumped onto the opposite bank. The forest suddenly grew quiet, too quiet. Even the insects had stopped singing. Felix halted so abruptly that Hyunjin nearly collided with him. What is it? Felix slowly crouched and pointed toward the ground. Fresh footprints, several pairs. They weren't behind them, they were ahead. They've surrounded us, Felix murmured. Hyunjin's stomach tightened. Knew where we'd run. Realization settled between them with frightening clarity. Someone had predicted every move. A twig snapped somewhere to their right, another to their left. Flashlights pierced the darkness again. Felix grabbed the wooden box tighter beneath his jacket. This way. He pushed through a curtain of vines covering what looked like a solid rock wall. Behind it was a narrow opening, a cave. Cool air rushed from inside, smelling of stone and underground water. Hyunjin hesitated. You know this place? My mother brought us here once. I don't remember. You weren't supposed to. Felix disappeared into the darkness, with voices growing louder outside. Hyunjin followed. The passage narrowed until they had to walk sideways. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing through the tunnel. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. After several minutes, the cave opened into a hidden chamber. Hyunjin stopped in astonishment. The room was enormous. Its ceiling glittered with mineral crystals reflecting faint moonlight filtering through cracks above. An underground spring flowed quietly along one wall, its surface as still as polished glass. In the center stood an old wooden table covered by a thick layer of dust. Nothing else, no furniture, no signs of recent visitors, only silence. Felix carefully placed the box on the table. We can rest here for a few minutes. Hyunjin leaned against the stone wall, trying to steady his breathing. Had enough mysteries? Felix nodded. So ask. Hyunjin looked directly at him. What happened 8 years ago? Felix stared at the spring. I thought forgetting would protect you. Didn't. I know. Happened? Felix took a slow breath. The night before I disappeared, my mother died. Hyunjin lowered his eyes. I remember the funeral. No, Felix's voice became almost hollow. You remember what everyone was told. Hyunjin looked up sharply. What do you mean? My mother wasn't killed by an accident. Words echoed through the chamber. Hyunjin remained motionless. She was trying to hide something. Box, Felix nodded. And whatever is inside it. Hyunjin glanced toward the weathered wooden box. It doesn't look valuable. Isn't. Then why are people chasing us? Felix hesitated. Because they believe it contains proof. Proof of what? I still don't know. Hyunjin blinked. You don't know? My mother never had time to explain. Before Hyunjin could respond, Felix unfolded one of the letters from inside the box. The paper had yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant. My dear Felix and Hyunjin, if you are reading this together, then my greatest wish has come true. It means neither time nor fear was strong enough to erase the promise you made beneath this tree. There will be people who tell you that memories can be rewritten. Do not believe them. There will be people who tell you the truth is dangerous. Believe that, but never let fear become stronger than kindness. Hyunjin listened in silence. Felix continued reading. One day you will wonder why I entrusted 2 children with something so important. The answer is simple. Because children protect promises better than adults protect power. Felix stopped, his hands trembled, the letter ended there. Rest is missing, he whispered. Hyunjin carefully examined the torn edge, it was ripped. Years ago, did it? I don't know. Hyunjin looked toward the second unopened letter. Aren't you going to read the other one? Felix shook his head. It has your name. My name, he handed it over. Written neatly across the envelope were only 2 words for Hyunjin. His fingertips trembled as he opened it. Inside rested a single folded page, the handwriting matched the first. Hyunjin, you have always carried guilt that was never yours. If your memories return, remember this: before anything else, you did nothing wrong. His breathing faltered. A dull ache spread behind his eyes again. Images flashed: rain, broken glass, someone crying, a little boy covered in blood. Hyunjin whispered. The memories vanished before he could grasp them. He read on. Felix will blame himself, you will blame yourself, neither of you should. Some promises demand impossible sacrifices. The final sentence was barely legible. When the stars point north, open what remains hidden. Nothing else. Hyunjin lowered the letter slowly. What does that even mean? Felix gave a weary smile. Spent 8 years asking the same question. Cave fell silent once more. Only the soft trickle of the underground spring could be heard. Then Hyunjin noticed something unusual. The silver compass lying beside the letters. Its needle wasn't pointing north, it spun in slow, endless circles. He picked it up. Felix looked over. What's wrong? The compass, spinning, suddenly stopped. Instead of pointing north, it pointed directly toward the stone wall behind the old table. A low grinding sound echoed through the chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Both of them stared as a narrow crack appeared across the ancient wall, as though some hidden mechanism buried for years had finally awakened. The grinding sound grew louder until the entire chamber trembled beneath their feet. Dust drifted through the air like pale smoke, catching the faint beams of moonlight that filtered through the cracks above. Tiny stones bounced across the uneven floor, disappearing into the underground spring with soft splashes. Neither Felix nor Hyunjin moved. The compass remained perfectly still in Hyunjin's hand, its needle unwavering as it pointed toward the stone wall. Another deep rumble echoed through the cave. A thin line widened across the ancient rock, revealing a narrow passage hidden behind centuries of silence. Cold air flowed from the opening. It carried the scent of old parchment, damp stone, and something strangely familiar. Felix's heartbeat quickened. Never seen this before. Hyunjin looked at him. You mean your mother never showed you? Felix slowly shook his head. No. A long moment they simply stared into the darkness beyond the hidden doorway. The passage seemed untouched by time. No footprints disturbed the thick layer of dust covering the floor, no cobwebs stretched across the entrance. It was as though the cave itself had been waiting. Hyunjin stepped closer. His fingertips brushed the rough stone surrounding the opening. Strange symbols had been carved into its surface, circles intertwined with stars, lines crossing one another like constellations. He traced one carefully. Seen this symbol? Felix frowned. Where? I don't know. Answer frustrated him. The image existed somewhere inside his memory, just beyond reach, like a dream fading moments after waking. Felix pulled a small flashlight from his backpack and switched it on. Its pale beam swept across the hidden corridor. The walls were covered with faded murals, children, trees, stars, hands reaching toward one another. The paintings looked ancient, yet their colors had survived remarkably well. Hyunjin walked slowly through the entrance. Every step echoed softly. The deeper they ventured, the narrower the passage became until it opened into another chamber, much smaller than the first. In its center stood a stone pedestal. Upon it rested a weathered leather journal, nothing else, no treasure, no mysterious machines, only a single journal waiting beneath layers of dust. Felix approached carefully. It can't be. What? My mother always kept a journal. Hyunjin watched as Felix gently lifted it. The leather cover had cracked with age. Embossed across the front was the same star carved into the wooden box. Felix opened the first page. Inside, elegant handwriting greeted them. If you have found this place, then the promise still lives. Felix's voice almost disappeared into the silence. It really is hers. Hyunjin stood beside him. The next pages described ordinary days, family meals, picnics, sketches of flowers, little stories about Felix learning to ride a bicycle. Drawings of Hyunjin laughing with muddy hands after falling into the stream. They exchanged surprised glances. She wrote about everything, Hyunjin whispered. Felix smiled sadly. She never wanted to forget. Several pages later the tone changed, the handwriting became hurried, uneven. I believe someone has begun watching us. The questions have become more dangerous. They keep asking about the archive. I told them I know nothing. Hyunjin looked up. Archive. Felix slowly turned another page. There are names I no longer trust. If anything happens to me, Felix and Hyunjin must never carry this burden alone. Another page. They think memory belongs to those with power. They are wrong. Memory belongs to those who choose compassion. Journal ended abruptly. Several pages had been torn away. Felix closed the cover gently. They took the important part. Not all of it. Hyunjin pointed toward the inside cover. Something had been folded into a hidden pocket. Felix carefully removed it. A map. Hand-drawn, simple, several locations were connected by a winding red line. Near the bottom corner, a single sentence had been written. Truth sleeps where the sea meets the silent lighthouse. Felix stared at the map. I know where this is. You do. My mother took us there once. Hyunjin searched his memory again. This time another image surfaced, waves crashing against black rocks, a white lighthouse standing alone beneath countless stars, a woman smiling. Remember this place. His head throbbed. He pressed a hand against his temple. The memory disappeared before he could grasp the rest. Felix noticed. Did you remember something? Only pieces. They're coming back. I wish they weren't. Before Felix could answer, a distant sound drifted through the cave, footsteps very faint but unmistakable. They weren't outside anymore, they were inside the tunnel. Hyunjin extinguished the flashlight instinctively. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Both of them stood perfectly still. The footsteps continued, slow, measured. Someone else had discovered the hidden entrance. Felix leaned close enough for Hyunjin to hear only a whisper. Closer than I thought. Footsteps stopped, silence, then a calm voice echoed through the passage. You don't have to run anymore. Hyunjin froze. The voice wasn't threatening, it wasn't angry, it sounded almost familiar. Felix's expression hardened. I hoped we'd have more time. Do you know who that is? Hyunjin breathed. Felix answered without taking his eyes off the darkness. Yes. A lone figure emerged at the end of the corridor, illuminated by a sliver of moonlight spilling through the hidden entrance. He wasn't dressed like the people who had chased them across the hill. He wore a long grey coat dusted with rain, and despite the exhaustion on his face, his eyes carried a quiet sadness instead of hostility. When his gaze settled on Hyunjin, he smiled faintly. Grown up exactly as she believed you would. Hyunjin's pulse quickened. You knew her. The stranger lowered his head. For longer than either of you can imagine. Felix tightened his grip on the journal. What do you want? The man looked from the journal to the wooden box, then back to the two friends standing side by side. I came to keep the last promise I made to your mother. Stranger did not take another step. He remained where the moonlight touched the stone floor, his hands visible at his sides. The silence inside the hidden chamber stretched between the three of them, broken only by the slow dripping of water from the ceiling. Hyunjin studied the man's face. There was no hatred in his eyes, only exhaustion and grief. Felix, however, did not lower his guard. You know my mother, Felix said. I did. Then tell me your name. Man hesitated before answering. My name is Daniel. Name meant nothing to Hyunjin, but Felix's expression changed. Heard that name before. Daniel gave a faint nod. Your mother mentioned me. Felix frowned. She said you were the only person she still trusted. Daniel's shoulders sank. Then I failed her. The words carried such quiet regret that Hyunjin instinctively believed he meant them. Felix remained cautious. If she trusted you, where were you 8 years ago? Daniel closed his eyes. I arrived too late. The answer hung heavily in the air. No one spoke. Finally, Daniel looked toward the journal resting in Felix's hands. She left it for you. Most of it's gone. I know. Tore out the pages. Daniel's gaze shifted to the dark passage behind him. They did. People chasing us. Yes. Hyunjin stepped forward. Who are they? Daniel remained silent for several seconds. They're people who believe the past should belong only to those who control it. Don't understand. You will. His calm voice somehow made the words even more unsettling. Daniel reached into the pocket of his coat. Felix immediately stepped in front of Hyunjin. Don't. Daniel stopped. Slowly he withdrew a folded photograph instead of a weapon. I think this belongs to you. He placed it gently on the stone floor before taking a step back. Felix picked it up carefully. The picture was faded around the edges. 3 children stood laughing beneath the same oak tree. Felix, Hyunjin. Little girl neither of them recognized. Hyunjin stared at the image. Who is she? Daniel's expression softened. Her name was Yuna. Felix searched his memory. I don't remember her. I know. She our friend. Daniel nodded. The closest friend either of you ever had. Hyunjin felt another sharp ache inside his head for an instant. A girl's laughter echoed through his mind. Someone chasing butterflies across a meadow. A bright yellow ribbon dancing in the wind. Then, nothing. The memory vanished again. Hyunjin pressed his fingers against his forehead. Why can't I remember? Daniel looked at him sadly. Because someone wanted you to forget. Felix looked sharply toward Daniel. Someone erased our memories, not completely. That's impossible, so I once believed. Daniel slowly approached the ancient murals covering the wall. His fingertips brushed one of the painted stars. Memories are fragile. Fear can bury them, trauma can distort them. Sometimes people choose to forget because remembering hurts too much. Hyunjin whispered, and sometimes someone helps them forget. Daniel didn't answer. His silence was enough. Felix unfolded the map again. My mother's note mentions a lighthouse. Daniel nodded. You must go there. Why? Because what's missing from the journal isn't truly missing. Felix blinked. What do you mean? The pages were removed. Daniel looked directly into Felix's eyes. But your mother expected that. Hyunjin frowned. So she hid the real truth somewhere else. Exactly. Felix let out a slow breath. At the lighthouse. Daniel nodded once. The final piece has waited there for years. The first time since their reunion, a fragile sense of direction settled over them, not certainty but purpose. Hyunjin folded the map carefully. We leave before sunrise. Daniel smiled faintly. That would be wise. Suddenly, a dull metallic sound echoed through the tunnel, then another. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Here. Felix heard it too, the unmistakable click of heavy boots against stone. Not one person, many. Flashlight beams flickered across the far end of the passage. Daniel turned toward the entrance. Slow them down. Felix shook his head. No, you don't have time to argue. We're not leaving you. Daniel smiled, a tired smile that reminded Felix painfully of his mother's. Your mother once told me something. He looked at both young men. A promise only matters if it protects someone besides yourself. Gently placed a small brass key into Felix's hand. Lighthouse. Felix stared at it. This opens something there. Daniel nodded. It opens what your mother spent her life protecting. Approaching footsteps grew louder. Voices echoed through the cave. Inside, search every chamber. Daniel stepped backward toward the narrow corridor. I can hold them long enough. Felix's jaw tightened. There has to be another way. There isn't. Hyunjin looked toward the hidden exit on the opposite side of the chamber that Daniel had quietly revealed with a glance. A narrow crack in the stone, barely wide enough for one person at a time. Daniel noticed. That passage leads to the cliffs above the river. Felix looked at Hyunjin. Hyunjin looked back without speaking. Both understood. They had already lost too much. They could not lose the truth as well. Daniel gave one final nod. Go. Felix slipped the journal, the map, and the brass key safely into his backpack. Hyunjin carefully tucked both letters inside his jacket. The wooden box remained in Felix's hands. They moved toward the narrow passage. Just before disappearing into the darkness, Felix looked back. Thank you. Daniel's smile returned. You don't owe me thanks. He faced the approaching lights. You owe your mother the courage to finish what she began. Felix and Hyunjin exchanged one last glance before squeezing through the hidden opening. Behind them, the ancient stone passage slowly concealed their escape, while the sounds of rushing water grew louder with every step toward the unseen cliffs, carrying them farther from the cave and closer to the forgotten lighthouse where the next piece of their shared past awaited.